Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome back to another PorscheCooled Podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things Porsche. Once again, we're going to have Steve joining us by Zoom. Steve is in Australia. Steve is a GT3 owner, if you don't know already. He's also owned a 964 and a 993, and this is a podcast where Steve and I chat every week. It goes up every Friday on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else. And it's also put up on my YouTube channel, Michael Barth, if you want to watch it or listen to it, I should say, on YouTube. There's really not any visuals. Every now and again, I may put some visuals up there, but it's usually just the audio track. And for those of you who know, when it goes up on YouTube, it does have ads in the video. If you listen to it through just your podcast suppliers, obviously there's no ads. This is not a sponsored podcast or anything. In saying that, we do have a PorscheCooled membership set up through Patreon. So if you want to go over there and check that out, it's if you go to Patreon and you just search patreon.com and you just search for PorscheCooled, you can become a PorscheCooled member and help support the podcast. We have two members there at the moment. We have Tim and we have Justin, who just signed up this week. So thank you to both of them for becoming the first two members of the PorscheCooled Podcast. Anyway, without further ado, as they say, I will get Steve on the line through Zoom. Hopefully we've got good audio again today, and we'll start talking Porsche. Okay, so we're back. Steve is here. Hi, Steve.
Hey, mate. How you going?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you.
How are your levels? Are they good?
Bad.
I always ask that because
I fucked it up last time.
No, I asked that because
yeah,
I actually, and I'll get onto this, but Nick, who I did the Porsche stories with last night, I asked him to up his levels, and they were actually a bit hot. Yeah. I shouldn't have actually asked him to update his levels, so I had to bring them down. So it's best if you just decide if your levels are right, and then we can go on with that. But anyway, welcome back. As I said, this is our regular episode. This is Friday's episode. Steve is here, and just a bit of an update for... Actually, the first thing is, last week we did an episode on the 996, Steve, as you know. Mm-hmm. And it seems the 996 is a very hot topic. And I guess that must be... It's a hot topic. And I guess it's probably... what am I trying to say? The prices reflect that, I guess, because the prices are definitely on the rise on 996. You can see it. So I think what we'll do is we're going to have a couple of more 996 chats, and they'll probably be in the Tuesday episode of the PorscheCooled Podcast, which is the Porsche Stories or Porsche Stories, Steve. And I think we're going to have one guy who's going to talk about his 996 Cabriolet, who's from Australia. And we're also, I think, James at Auto Amateur is going to come on and talk about his Porsche passion and his Porsche journey, etc. Probably about his Porsche, the 996 project, and his channel, and his own three generations of air-cooled 911. So that should be a good be a Porsche story. So that's coming up in the next few weeks.
Is James, like, when James posts a video, like, is it sort of current? Like, I don't watch all of them and stuff. Sorry, James, but like, is his car almost? Do you know where his car is at? Is it almost finished?
I don't know, actually. I know that he was picking the color out, and he put the color up on Instagram, which is supposed to be Bali or Bali if you're in US, Bali blue. And I did send a message to him about it because I thought it was a bit dark, because I saw a 356 color, and I thought it was actually a better blue in my opinion. But it probably would look good on the 996, but I just thought it should have been a slightly lighter blue. But I think the last thing he was doing, he was getting it painted. If people don't know who we're talking about, this is Auto Amateur on YouTube, which is James, who's currently owns a 991 Carrera, and he owns a 996 Carrera, which he did a thing called Project 996. If you haven't seen it, go and check it out anyway, because it's on YouTube. Auto Amateur, just do that search. I always assume people know what we're talking about, but I've realized that sometimes people actually don't know what we're talking about, and I should give it some type of explanation. Basic documentary advice, right? I read up some of those things online about documentaries since you pushed me towards it.
That's because Michael was talking about talking to other enthusiasts just about their kind of stories, and I was suggesting I did a little bit of tinkering working on a documentary on the side, and it's a real art to talk to people that you don't know and sort of kind of get interesting conversation out of people. I know I can't do it because I'm like a massive introvert. So
yeah, the Porsche stories, as you know, as I said to you, and we agree, is that they have to be more conversational. You know what I mean? I don't want to do like a YouTube Q&A thing where it's just question and answer. No. So it has to be, it's more conversational. And I know I had someone ask me yesterday, that they've never done this before, a Porsche story sort of thing, and what does it involve? So I guess I need to explain that a little bit more to people. But I guess when the first one comes out, and getting back to that, last night I recorded the first one, as you know, the first Porsche Stories, number 1. And that's Nick from the UK. Nick is the guy that I've been mentioning before, who I went for a drive with down to Goodwood. And Nick owns a Carrera 4S, which he will talk about in that episode, which is coming up next Tuesday. So make sure you check out that one and look out for that one if you're listening, because that is on, this one will be on Friday, which you're listening to now, and the next one will be on Tuesday. So the one with Nick last night was good. It went for about an hour. I told him 25 minutes, so luckily he had time to spare, because we actually went way over 25 minutes. But I think with the Porsche story, Steve, I mean, they can be anywhere. If anyone wants to come on the podcast and talk about their Porsche and their, and it doesn't have to be a 911. It could be a Boxster. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be a 911. Yep. It's just a Porsche story. But I think, if you can talk for 25 minutes about your car, then don't worry so much, because that's all it is. I mean, if you want to talk for longer, we can go for longer. So that's where it is at the moment.
Yeah, cool.
Cars I've seen during the week. I just want to talk about this, and I mentioned to this before. I just want to talk about a few cars which stood out, you know what I mean? Because I'm always looking at things, in the UK and the US, as you know.
Yep.
And there is a site which I follow on Instagram called You Automobiles. I don't know whether you've seen that one, Steve. I think it's in Miami.
No, I haven't.
I think it's in Miami, and he tends to have a few Porsches, actually. I think he's got a GT3 in yellow there. I think he's got a couple of GT3s. He had a GT2. Quite a few nice Porsches. But the one that stood out is he had a white Carrera for sale. So he had a 1989, which is like what your uncle had, right? Didn't your uncle have a late model Carrera, 80s?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, so it's
full whale tail and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's a 911. It's a 2-door coupe, not a cab. It's G50, obviously, 5-speed G50 gearbox. It's in Grand Prix white, which they're calling rare. Yeah. I don't know whether Grand Prix white was I don't know if the color was a limited color, but I'm guessing it was.
That wasn't rare, was it? Not in Australia. My uncle had one.
Yeah, I thought white was just the common color in those G50 Carreras. And it has an interesting interior. I mean, it's You Automobiles. You should have a look at the site if you haven't been to it, if you're listening. But it's got a mahogany leather interior. So it actually works really, really well. And this car is immaculate. Like if you're in the US or even in Australia, you wanted to transport, send this over or buy it. But it's only got 62,000 miles. Do you want me to send you the link?
Yeah, sure.
And I think it's about 85,000. It's got 61,999 miles, and it's 84,900, and it's a pretty nice example. Like not many of these examples like this come up in Australia. I know that for sure. I think I worked it out, and if you actually got it sent to Australia, it would be very, very expensive. I guess you could get it sent to. Because I was looking into Bahrain, because Bahrain, I thought you can't send cars to Bahrain that are over, I think, 5 years old now. I think it used to be 9 years old. But you can send classics to Bahrain. So I was thinking, left-hand drive, you could send it to Bahrain for a bit, have it there, then you could send it back to the UK and have it here, and then do some trips through Europe next year, and then eventually send it back to Australia. So that was one of my crazy thoughts. But I think it's quite a nice example. It looks pretty immaculate.
Looks great. I'm trying to get to the mahogany bit. I'm trying to work out what color. Is mahogany brown or is it reddish?
No, I think it's brown.
It's brown.
But it's not that normal tan color that they do. It's not that usual that tan color.
Sort of like a camel color. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or cashmere, I think it's called.
Is it? Because they're calling it mahogany, like that's the color. I'm trying to find the other one for you as well. So the other one, there's a 964 for sale. There's an auction on in the UK called Classic Car Auctions, which I think is... Sorry, I keep not talking into the microphone. I've got to be very careful today because I was doing that last night. It's called Classic Car Auctions. I just sent you the link, Steve. And there's another car for sale there, which is a 964, which I think is actually quite a good price. It's a left-hand driver, though. It's a left hooker, as you say. And the estimate is 40,000 to 50,000 pounds. And it's a Carrera 2, 1990 Carrera 2. For estimate 40 to 50,000 pounds at Classic Car Auctions, which is under Silverstone Auctions, I think, in the UK. And it's an online auction, so you can bid for it anywhere in the world. And I don't think it has a lot of kilometres either. It's only got miles, sorry. It's got 45,000 miles, which is not that much, which is, 80,000 kilometres. So that's a pretty good price at 50,000 pounds. That's like 80,000 Australian dollars, Steve. So I have to compare that to the green oak one that I was telling you about last week.
Yep.
Did you see that one on car sales in Australia? So that green oak one is 150,000 Australian dollars. So my thought was, I could get a 964 if it's a 1990, which is 30 years old, which you can bring into Australia. It doesn't matter because it's left-hand drive. It's okay. It's over 30. But you can get it potentially at maybe a better price. But then you've got to add on duty and freight and everything. So it's probably still going to get up to around 120,000 Australian landed, though. Around about 120,000, 110, 120. So
you reckon it'd be a funny experience driving on the wrong side of the road, wrong side of the car in like a left-hand drive car in a right-hand drive market?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. For some reason in my head, I think it's okay in a 912 because a 912 is so old. But I think, and 912s really are, there's not. I don't know if there's any right-hand drive 912s because most of them seem to be left-handed. Even in the UK here, the ones for sale are all left-hand drives. I don't know if they even made them in right-hand drive. 911s.
Just kind of weird stuff like going through a drive-through McDonald's or, you don't have to pay a toll anymore, but just weird stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. I remember years ago when I was a kid, they used to have left-hand drive like on like decals on the back of the car, and there'd always be these big American like Cadillacs or something, and it'd have left-hand drive vehicle. And I remember as a kid seeing it, thinking, "Man, that's so weird." You know what I mean? Yeah. One, the size of the car was enormous. Like, how big are the streets in America? This is before I even went to America, obviously. And then, how could you drive a car like that? You know what I mean? So odd.
Yeah, it's funny how green cars are. Sorry.
Yeah.
Very funny how green cars are all the rage at the moment. I'm not quite sure what
I know, and you're not a big fan, remember?
Yeah. I had a green car. I had a green Golf VR6. I don't know if you remember that one.
Yes, I do.
What was that, a Mark III, the first VR6, and that was in dragon green. And it had a BMW saffron yellow interior. I know that's very different from a 911. Yeah.
Whoa, I don't remember that part. That was very, really cool. Very brave of you at the time, Steve.
Yeah. But I don't know. There's this massive kind of upsurge in green being such a popular kind of colour, particularly like with all the paint to sample.
Yeah.
Porsches, and I'm not quite sure what I think of it. It's quite fashionable.
It is. It's a bit like blue watches. If you're into watches and Rolex, watches are always blue. And I think the prime example of that is Apple's new release today, and they're doing a blue aluminium watch. You know what I mean? Because anything that's blue, if it's Tudor, if it's Rolex, if it's AP, anything with a blue face at the moment, you can't get. And there's a double. It's like 100% premium on trying to buy one on the grey market. So it's like blue with watches, and it's actually green with watches too, right? It's all related to fashion.
It was green, and then it went to blue, yeah. Yeah,
but now the Rolex sub's in green again. It's kind of the green thing is happening. But I remember when that 996 convertible was for sale at Autohouse Hamilton, and you thought I was a bit crazy by saying I was interested in it just recently, and it was a manual 996 cab, and it only had 42,000 kilometers on it, and it sat there for a while. This was during the beginning of Corona. I have to tell you, I still, in my head, think that was a really good buy. That car is like, it's just going to, like you could sell it tomorrow for 60. And you want to know why I reckon you could sell it for more right away? And I don't know whether this is, I don't know whether this is a new exhibit. And that was in green, remember? That was in forest green metallic or whatever as well. And I don't know whether this is a new exhibit at the Porsche Museum, but I saw on Instagram, they've got a 996 Cabriolet in silver with the hardtop roof on it, with a surfboard on display at the Porsche Museum.
Yeah, right.
And this goes to my new theory, and you're going to like this one, is that cabriolets have been, the unwanted 911 for a while, especially in 993s, 964s, and 996. I reckon that's changing. I think that cabriolets are having a bit of a rebirth. I think people are starting to look at them and go, I can get a 964 cab for 100K manual in Australia, right?
Yeah.
Or I can get a 964 coupe for 150. You're still getting a 964. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Do you think I'm right or do you think I'm wrong? I think people are starting to look at cabs again. And I think this exhibit at Porsche Museum kind of shows that it could be changing. It could be changing.
Yeah, no offense to kind of cab owners, but it's not my cup of tea. I just sort of think, like, I know that they sort of say these days they're equally as rigid and all of that sort of stuff, so you don't get the scuttle shake and everything, but regardless of that, like, because, I'm sure it's stiff enough to kind of drive, go for a kind of good sort of spin, down the twisties, but, say, for example, a 992 or a 991, but I think also with the 911 cabs, it's just got that really heavy rear end, like it's even just the shape of it when the roof's folded back just doesn't look that good to me. So
yeah, obviously you're right. When it went to the 996, it obviously got a lot cleaner, but the 964 and 993 are a bit clunky.
Yeah, even speedsters like the 964 and the 993 speedsters, they're sort of like so highly revered, but to my eyes, aesthetically, I'm just going to go, looks quite, with the two humps at the back and everything, just looks a bit kind of bulky.
Except the 991. The 991's beautiful.
Yeah. But
the earlier
different
ones, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if that's why the cabs in my head, I reckon they're coming back and their prices are going to go up because of the Speedster. Because people are looking at the Speedster and the Speedster's not achievable, people are thinking maybe the cab's not so bad. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I don't know. Porsche's a weird market. Like we keep saying, if you miss it, you miss it. You know what I mean? Like something is 20 grand and the next week it's 100 grand and you just missed it. Something just happened. Like you said with the 964s last week, all of a sudden they're hated and not wanted, and then all of a sudden they're more popular than 993 and more expensive.
Hard to tell, and hard to kind of. I guess it's easy to dismiss it as being fashionable, the same way I was just kind of suggesting that green was sort of like this kind of weird in thing at the moment, but it just sort of moves around.
But the green is weird though. It has become super popular, hasn't it? I mean, it started with people getting PTS in 911 was it GT3 Tourings and things like that. You see pictures and speedsters, and it really has gone a bit crazy, the green. And even like you said,
specking, like on PTRS, the Instagram, that Will Lee guy. When people it's just caught my eye recently where people spec their paint to sample 992 or 991 Speedster in British racing green. Is like, I always just associate British racing green with Jags, not Porsches. So it just sort of feels like a funny combination.
Yeah, and I guess that is the main thing, right? It's not really a German color, and these colors are the racing colors, right? The colors are basically the racing colors, and green was never really not to my knowledge, it wasn't a Porsche traditional heritage racing color. It's just a color that was introduced. I don't even know what. I mean, obviously the 912 comes in Irish green, and the 912 is, if you find a 912 in Irish green, it always fetches more money than another color.
Yeah.
And it's like the car that I saw on Bring a Trailer that sold, that the guy put in it sold last week, and he put in one big bid of 150,000, I think it was US. He just sort of jumped up, and and people were saying, orange always fetches a good price in 911s. It's always that orange color. So that leads me to another one on Bring a Trailer as well, which you should check out. There's a 911T on there, a 1969 911T on Bring a Trailer, and it's 50,000 miles. It's 5-speed. I'm going to send you the link now, Steve, so you can see it while we're talking about it. But I think if you were buying a classic, and of course the 911T or 911E or 911S is probably probably still better than getting a 912. When I talk about 912s, and someone asked me about it the other day, have I forgotten about the 912? I haven't actually forgotten about it. I'm going to talk about one after this. But the 912 is because the price is very good, and it literally looks like the 60s 911s, because it's pretty much the same except for the engine. But as you can see, this 911T in Tangerine, which is a pretty nice example, is sitting at sitting at 80K already. If you check Bring a Trailer, just do a search for 911T if the listeners are listening and want to have a look at this car. But it's, obviously this is a flat six. It's not a 4-cylinder like the 912 manual. Tangerine, 15-inch Fuchs wheels, and then the seats have got the leatherette sport seats with Pepita, but you also get the original seats with it. It comes with the original seats as well. So, because I think those seats they're not Porsche seats. I think they're aftermarket seats. Those ones with the leatherette. Right. I think. Yeah. But I reckon that's a pretty good one. If you had the money, like that orange, that's if you want one air-cooled 911. I think the 911T, I don't know whether the 69 is a good year. I think the 70 was a better year from memory. I think people say the 70 or 71 was a better year. But I'm not an expert on 911Ts.
I know nothing about old Porsches, so.
Yeah. But, those prices being high, I think is what's happening with the 912 market, Steve. The 912 market, it's definitely going up. It's definitely it's going to be, and I know you said that you spoke to someone who was a Porsche enthusiast in Sydney, and they thought that the 912 was overpriced for what it is. And a prime example of this is that sand beige 1969. 1969 was a slightly longer wheelbase, so it actually handled better. It was the last year of the 912 before they discontinued it. I mean, they only had the 912 running from 65 to 69. And that guy in Melbourne has the sand beige one, which, I'm still really keen on. Tasha, my wife, hates the color. Tasha thinks the color's boring in that. She thinks it should be a bit brighter color. Because it's beige and beige, right? It's beige and beige. It's beige and sand interior. But I think in the 912 it kind of works. And Zuckerman has that color in it. Zuckerman has that color in a 911. Zuckerman from Spike's Car Radio, he has that in a 911, but his interior is black. So obviously a black interior would have been better. But that guy had it listed during the start of Corona, and I think I emailed him or messaged him in the beginning to ask him to see a photo of underneath the car, and he didn't have one. And it was listed at 82,500 Australian dollars. I thought it had sold. Last week it reappears. Right. Same seller, same owner. He obviously just pulled it. Now he's trying to sell it for $92,500. So at least he didn't just up the price when it was still live. He took it off for a few months and then he put it back on. So it's $10,000 more.
He's a listener. He's waiting for you to kind of hype the hell out of the market.
Well, I think it's, and I can see watching Bring a Trailer auction, Steve, that the prices are jumping though. They really are jumping. Where else are we? And you said you saw a GT3 that you liked during the week, or someone who lives in your area, right?
Yeah, I won't say where I live. I'd rather not. But it's funny. I take my dog for a walk every morning, and where I do live, I think people just tend to kind of go for a bit of a blat, take their kind of cars out, and either that or there's some weird little GT3 society around the corner from me, because I keep seeing a car that's very similar to mine, like a white 997.1 GT3 with silver wheels, and I'm always listening out for it now because I'm curious to see if it's got what the exhaust sounds like. And one day I saw it following what I thought was Riviera or Mexico Blue 991.2.
Yeah.
And then I think I sent it to you during the week. I just noticed an ad kind of came up, and there's a guy, pretty funny ad. He's sort of talking about... Yeah, no,
it's funny. It's funny. I thought it was...
Talking about the fact that he's put on 6 kilos and has to sell the car, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it can no longer fit into the lightweight buckets because he's put on weight, so that's why he's getting rid of the car. But if he loses weight, he'll keep it. I think it's quite a good ad. It's
full marks for... Yeah, exactly, for making your ad a little bit more interesting. But I noticed... it was a few suburbs away from where I am, so it's like, oh, maybe that's this kind of car that keeps. I've seen it twice, kind of coming up the street as I've been walking the dog. So
yeah, I think it's pretty nice. I always have. I know we speak about this privately, but it's like that's Miami blue, And and when the green one comes up, there was a green one that came up for sale, a GT3, the lizard green or whatever it is. And you think, you like that color, but how long can you live with that color? Which color could you live with for longer? And I think you're probably right. I think the Miami blue you could actually live with for longer than the lizard green. I think the lizard green it would tire on you. I think it would scare you. One morning you come out and you go, I can't live with this color anymore. I have to get rid of it. You know what I mean? But it was interesting with the Miami blue one that's come up for sale, this one you're talking about, which is a manual 991.2 GT3. I think it's about 330 odd Australian dollars. And then Autohouse Hamilton just listed the same 991.2 GT3 in GT Silver, but it's a PDK and it's $299.
Yeah.
So are manuals fetching that much more? Because it's pretty much similar spec, right? Except the one in Autohouse was PDK.
I didn't actually compare them, to be perfectly honest. And it might.
I think it's Club Sport.
It might also be because Miami, or it's Miami, isn't it? It's Miami.
Yeah,
Blue.
Miami Blue.
Not Riviera.
No.
Maybe that would have been paint to sample, wouldn't it?
It's a special color on the configurator. It's not paint to
special
sample.
color. Yeah.
Riviera Blues.
It's a
PDS. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe there's a premium for that as well. Compared to silver, which is
yes,
no offense, but
silver
just
is
sort of like a more standard color.
Yeah, you're right. Silver's the first tier, and then custom colors. I think Miami Blue's in with crayon. It's in that group. There's that small group. I think Carmine Red and crayon or chalk, as they call it, and Miami Blue.
You're right.
I think Riviera Blue's a better color. There was a guy in Sydney that had a Riviera Blue one. I remember I saw it on Renlist. He posted on Renlist, but I think he lived in South Australia. And I think it actually came up for sale a while back, and I think I might have sent you the link, and it was Riviera Blue.
Yep.
To me, Riviera Blue is I could live with Riviera Blue for longer, I think. It's a nicer color. It's a bit darker, right? It's got a slightly...
They're very similar, though, aren't they? I'm pretty sure that once you're kind of in tune with the differences, I'm sure you could pick it. But I think, like, to a layman, you probably wouldn't really sort of notice the difference. It's just that really kind of punchy sort of cyan-y blue.
It depends on the country as well, like I see these bright colors in Bahrain and they really do work. I see, when you see the lava orange in Bahrain and the lizard green, I've seen both of them and they just really work there. And I think it's because of all the beige landscape, because it's all beige buildings and sand basically, but I think it does work. And the color that looked so different in Bahrain and a friend of Natasha's father, where he lived in this quite expensive sort of compound, across someone had the crayon chalk, Carrera S in crayon chalk. And the color just looks so different in Bahrain. Like, I thought it was a different color. It looked completely different. It looked more gray. It looked like fashion gray or something, that old-fashioned gray color that Porsche do. It's weird how the light plays tricks, like on the color. And that's what I think is bad when you're picking a car from people you see on forums, like you might be someone in the US or somewhere wherever, or Europe. And then you order the car in Australia and the color just looks completely different with the light and everything in...
I think just also from photographs.
Yeah.
Because particularly, with Instagram filters and stuff like that, or like if you're kind of halfway handy with Photoshop, like trying to get an accurate kind of color representation. It's so much easier to make something look good on screen, but in real life is very different.
Yeah, and I hate this trend at the moment. You've probably seen it when people are selling cars, they always up the contrast on everything. It's like these
so
photos
it's ridiculously shiny.
Yeah, the contrast, and you can't. I think there was a car on Bring a Trail, and someone said, "Can you just put some normal photos up so I can actually see what it looks like?" Because it's so difficult to see the car when the filters are like that.
Yeah, we were talking about an ad. Probably shouldn't point out exactly which one it was, but there was a car that was just sort of sold that had some professional shots of it, and I thought that was a little bit funny. Like, I know you want to sort of show your car in its best light, but if I was a buyer, I don't want to see sort of like magazine style shots of the car to kind of judge it. I actually want to see, sort of normal shots where I can sort of try to pick the condition of it.
Yeah, I know. I'm the same.
And that's coming from like an art director, so...
Well, I think the problem is when so many people now are quite comfortable buying cars online. Like, it's quite weird how it really has changed, right? And US is, that's for sure, with Bring a Trailer and all these sites and P-Car Market. People are keen on doing it. You've got to give a photo that's a true representation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's too hard when it's just an online thing. And obviously the videos are fine. You can see the video and you can see the driving videos and things like that. So it's funny how quickly things have changed, right?
But even if it was, pretend you were in Sydney and you were, you're ready to kind of take the plunge in your GT3, like you'd be buying a used one and you wouldn't necessarily just be buying it from Sydney. So there's a good chance that you'll be looking at photos of a car in Melbourne or WA or something like that. So,
true.
I mean, I bought my car from Melbourne. I never saw it.
Yeah, true.
You just can't tell. Anyway.
Yeah, and then you get it and you realise there are some imperfections, as you noticed when you got your car, right? Little bits here and there with the paint that weren't up to your standards. But your standards are very high, as everyone knows your standards are very high. Steve is the king of washing and waxing. He's even better than me.
No, I don't know about that. Anyway.
All right. You haven't seen Nick Murray's video, so we won't talk about that, but we might talk about that in another episode.
I'll watch it.
Go on.
He's obviously picked himself up a 993, so I was kind of curious as to... but I noticed in the thumbnail that it's a cab.
He picked up a 993 Cabriolet. He basically had a list of all the things he wanted, and basically all he got was the fact that he wanted a 993 and he wanted a manual. He didn't want a cab. Mm-hmm. He wanted one with low miles. It didn't have low miles, but he seems quite happy with it. There seems to be a couple of people in the comments who are not so happy, but they don't sort of understand why he's bought something so like beat up, so well worn. I can understand why he's done it. Anyway, watch the video. We'll talk about it another time. But that means he's selling that 928, which I mentioned to Nick last night when I was doing the podcast with Nick on Porsche Owner Stories. He is keen on a 928, and I reckon if you want to buy a 928 and you want to buy a left-handed one, buy the one off Nick Murray because he's just had it resprayed. It's apparently it looks pretty immaculate. So if it's
never had a go in one, I've always wanted to try it, but I do remember once I was visiting Auto House and Grant, the owner, saw me kind of eyeing up like what looked like a really cool 928, and he sort of shook his head at me and sort of said, "Not for you, Steve." And I sort of said to him, "Why?" And he said, the electrics." He just sort of said like the electricals on it are pretty kind of curly, so they can be kind of dear if they kind of mess it.
Nick Murray said in his video last night that the previous owner, he reckons he only paid $36,000 for it on P-Car Market. He bought it off P-Car Market. And he said the previous owner spent, I think, don't quote me, but I think he said $30,000 odd fixing up all the electrics. So he thought because the previous owner had put so much into fixing that side of it, which is obviously an issue with the 928, like he just said, he put the money into fixing up the exterior. I guess a lot of people are going to say, well, that 928 looks immaculate. It's a really good one. He said he can't have 3 cars because he's only got a 2-car garage. So he's already got the Macan and he's got the 993. I know people are going to say, why wouldn't you keep it? You know what I mean? Because it's only going to appreciate that 928. And it's in the green as well. Green over tan, you know, the color of the moment. So tell us about the 997. I think you can talk about it. You said you could. About the 997 you saw at the leather guy in Sydney. I forgot.
So I went to visit... how do I explain the story? Oh, okay. So like John from Pro Stitch, who I think we've mentioned before, sort of did a little bit of stuff for me. What do you do? Like the RS-style door pulls and the console lid. And I
Sorry,
heard
Steve.
about
have you done the console lid? Have you?
Yeah. Remember?
You got it back.
Yeah.
Did you send me a photo of that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
You were probably looking more at the silly gear knob than you were at the actual kind of lid.
Right. Okay.
So it's all in that. But anyway, so discovered John, who I knew had been around, but went to kind of visit, and he had just mentioned that in a couple of weeks he was about to kind of work on 997 for a customer, and I was kind of sort of just having a chat, but also sort of scoping it out for you because I know that I guess I've been encouraging you with regards to your center console. So I basically sort of said to John, can you tell me how much it would cost to kind of redo the center console in leather for Michael? And he sort of said, well, it's funny that you say that. Like, I've probably got a car kind of coming in a couple of weeks. Why don't you kind of let me start working on the car and I'll kind of come back to you. And I just said, if you don't mind, if you're kind of working on it, I'll come and visit you and just have a little look. So I won't sort of divulge too much because I don't quite know exactly how much I can talk about, but it was really interesting because this car was sort of, it's a project car. The dude that's kind of got it is obviously he's put some Fuchs style, like sport classic type wheels, a ducktail, so it's very very much inspired by the limited edition sport classic, the thing with that was in grey with the centre stripes and the double hump thing on the
one I love.
on the roof. Yeah, really really beautiful sort of special edition thing. So I guess inspired by that, but I went and had a look at John's work. So this is John at Pro Stitch, and he's really bloody good. Like his craftsmanship. Like I'm not sort of saying I'm a connoisseur of interiors, but I have seen, various kind of retrims in my time, and John's stuff is well up there. Like he'd completely done the seats, put a little bit of piping detail on the seats in black Napa. I remember, Michael, you once sort of said to me, do you reckon it's okay to kind of retrim like a dash?
Yeah.
And because I know what you're sort of saying, like you got to rip a dash out and, like, will it look any good? John had done that to this 996 and it was amazing.
It'd be interesting though, Steve, to know how much that costs for the dash, because the Porsche part, which was on Suncoast, I don't know whether it still is, was $5,500 US for that part, not including the fitting and whatever. So it'd be interesting to see how it would compare to get it done custom or to get the actual part fitted.
Yeah, and like I'm obviously not for me to speak on John's behalf at all. I have no idea about the money, but I had my 993 dash redone, and I remember saying to you, it's like, if you get somebody good, they'll do an amazing job. Like just some of the detail, like on this car that John was working on, the dash looked brilliant. He did some embossing on the seat headrest and on the console lid, like with the crest. And you know how you pointed out how you think the factory bit was quite sharper than the picture that you'd sort of seen of an aftermarket one. Like I looked at that and that was pretty good.
So closer than Design LS's console.
I can't tell because I hadn't seen that one, obviously in person. And look, John was just talking me through like some of the bits that he'd done. I found it quite interesting because he was, I asked him what leather he was using, and it was Napa. And he sort of, he'd done, like the, I've got them in my car. I bought them from Exclusive Option. The door spears, the bit that goes around the window switches on the doors that you quite like.
Yeah, nice touch.
I know. I sort of was looking at it, and he sort of said, "Yeah, like they're really tricky, and what you have to do is with the black Napa, you've actually got to shave it down to make it much, much, much thinner, because then you're obviously kind of wrapping sort of like a curved surface to stop it from buckling. And like my Exclusive Option ones, they're good, but you can tell there's a little bit of buckling in it. Just the craft of what they do.
Yeah, the craft. See, it sounds like John at Pro Stitch is very much like Design LS, Linus at Design LS. Because when I asked him about my sun visors, and I was a bit distressed by the plastic mirror wasn't covered in leather, and I noticed Exclusive Options ones were online. I know yours are not, but I know now there are some that he does actually cover the whole thing. Linus told me the exact same thing. He said, if you want the mirrors covered, I can do it. It's not cheap because I have to shave it down and cover it in a different way so that it all closes and it all works. So I guess that's similar to the thing. But maybe the way John at Pro Stitch was saying with the door spears, doing it, you won't get the switch sticking. So maybe he's a better person to get the door spears done. See, from what you showed me in those pictures, Steve, I think the things that are interesting to me is the fact that, you said the door, and I'll get back to I'll say about the door spears actually, because you said how the switches stick a bit. See, the door spears, I don't want to buy them and have to install them. And I think you had to get yours installed by Autohouse, right? You didn't install the spears yourself, did you?
I can't remember,
I think it's quite complicated.
It wasn't me.
Yeah, I saw the video online on how you install them. They're not easy. So I think something like that, I wouldn't have a problem going to John, like to John at Pro Stitch, like to do the door spears, because it's a bit of hassle, and also, like you said, the center console, the lower center console, not the lid, the whole console. I think those two things. I think those two things I would get him to do. I think that would be, because it has to be taken out, refitted. You can use your part. You know what I mean? You don't have your car for a while. It doesn't matter.
Also, just to round it out, like I'm probably sort of selling his wares a little bit, but I really was that impressed with the car that I saw, because he'd he told me that, some of the soft touch plastics, he'd kind of had them refinished, like resprayed and refinished, which is kind of pretty cool. He'd had the seat belts redone, like rewebbed, to match the colour, which I know that at one point you were sort of pondering whether or not to kind of put silver belts in your car.
That interests me too. The rewebbing thing interests me as well, to know how much that would cost. I mean, I'd like to go and see him when I come back to Sydney, that's for sure, just to see what
and
is possible.
He's cool. He's obviously very good at what he does, but then also he's a sort of a true Porsche guy. Like, he owns a 356 Outlaw, a 7911 and a 964.
Yeah, he's got a good selection.
So he's definitely somebody you could kind of hang with and talk to and learn a lot from.
Yeah, I mean, he
knows his stuff.
Yeah, he obviously does. We can't share those images, but I think the other thing I found interesting was I always wondered how you could put, how inserts in the seats would look, like whether it's tartan or pepita or whatever. We won't say what John's done on this car, but, obviously it can be done. He did it. And it looks good. It actually looks good in those seats. It didn't look bad. You know what I mean? I'm not keen of having the fabric on the doors. I know he had it on the doors as well. That to me, I don't like that personally. I mean, that's personal choice. And obviously the stitch color on that one that he did wasn't in my sort of style. But it's interesting though how the ducktail and the the Fuchs and that sort of and the fabric interior thing, how it is such a big thing though, isn't it? It really is the trend at the moment that most people are adding a ducktail, or they're adding Fuchs, or they're putting Pepita inside. That is, everything's going back to that classic look. And I guess you can call that like a 997 project car. And the thing is, me, I'm a little bit OEM. I don't like to go too far away from it. But
sure,
I don't know. I mean, would you do it? If you found a 996 that was a bit, not that great, or a 997 that you could pick up cheap. I'd have to be a 996 now. I don't think it could be a 997. Even 996 is going to be hard. Would you just hand it over to someone like John and just say, look, this is what I want, and just get them to do it?
Well, it's the full, I guess, like when you think about the whole sort of resto mod kind of craze, obviously, there's a ton of money being thrown at Singers and Theon Design and the Dutchman 964s. There's all of these kind of companies, and they're sort of like what we think are older cars, but it's probably just kind of creeping into 996s and 997s. It's just all about the money, really. Like, if you've got enough cash, because it's like that CSR one, that is it RPM Technic?
RPM Technic in the UK, yes.
Yeah, Henry Catchpole did that pretty cool YouTube video of the 997 CSR.
Yeah.
I think he sort of said it in the video, which is like, by the time you kind of do all of this, you're probably at more money than the equivalent sort of GT3. So arguably, it begs the question, which one would you kind of have? But I'm assuming that type of person probably has quite a few sort of Porsches in the garage. And if you've kind of got quite a few in the garage and you're really that enthusiastic and interested, it's like, playing with a 997 and just going to town and making it look the way that you want, sort of speccing the performance bits, making the interior the way that you want it, would be pretty cool.
It would be. And I think because, like you said, Singer and Gunther Works and all these companies, what they're doing to 993s and 964s is out of a lot of people's budget. It's way too expensive. Yeah. As good as they look, you're looking at 500,000 US or even more, right? So you have to have money to spend on something like that. If you do a 997 or a 996 project car, and you do it through, like a local craftsman like John, or through, Gary in Classic FX in UK, I think he does stuff like that. And if you do it through, like Design LS, obviously the money you're going to spend is not going to be close to what you're spending on some full custom 964. So it becomes, it's like you see the reference, you like the 964, you like the 993, you like the Singer, you like the Gunther Works, but you can actually do it at a much lower cost for your 996 or 997. And I think that's where CSR have the market pretty sewn up in the UK. Because you look at their website, and I think their first car they did, Steve, was a Boxster. I think the very first car they did was a Boxster.
Yep.
And then they did a 997. I read it earlier today. They did a 997 Carrera S. That was the second car they did. But they've
done it to 996s before, hadn't they?
Yeah, and they've done 996s.
It looks pretty cool. I think it's obviously a particular type of clientele. So, like I sort of said before, I think if you've kind of been through all of that and you were sort of looking for something to play with, if it's somebody like you or I, where we're completely non-mechanical and you're never going to do all that sort of stuff yourself, but you just
Correct.
sort of want to customize something to your heart's content, it would be a hell of a lot of fun speccing it and doing it.
Yeah, and RPM Technic, I mean, if you go to someone like that, if you're in the UK, I don't think you can, I don't know how you do the parts if you weren't in the UK, but you can do, a couple of things, or you can do the whole project car, you know what I mean? And sometimes they have the whole project car for sale. I noticed they do 981 Boxsters as well, 981 Caymans as well. That could be an interesting upgrade with CSR if you had a 981 Cayman.
Look, if you're in Australia though, if you're in Sydney and you kind of wanted to, go to town on something like that, you can go to Autohouse. They do project cars as well.
Yeah, true.
I remember talking to them about sort of singers at one point, and I'm not sort of saying that they were turning their nose up at all, but they were just sort of saying, yeah, like it's a hell of a lot of money, and if you kind of asked us to kind of do a resto mod and sort of, completely strip a car and sort of put like a really good engine in it, blah, 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 it might not cost as much as a singer.
Well, see, that's a good thing. You get Autohouse does the engine and does all the mechanical. You've got John at Pro Stitch in Sydney that does all the interior.
Exactly.
And then you've got the bodyworks people. You've either got Atlas Motorworks in Artarmon, or you've got Ron Goodman, who a lot of people go to, the Ron Goodman one, which I can't remember the name of his company. So you actually have three really good... Exclusive
Autoworks.
Exclusive Autoworks, Ron Goodman. Which the listeners should check out his Instagram, because he has some great cars. And I saw his cars when they're on display at Porsche Sydney, South Sydney, City South, or whatever they call it, during the 70th anniversary when I went there and I visited. I did a video on it, actually. There's a video on YouTube. And a couple of his cars were actually there, a couple of his project cars, I guess, race cars.
Yep.
What else, Steve?
It'd be fun to do, but you'd be tipping a lot of money into it.
Yeah, you'd have to have a large budget. I think you'd have to allocate a certain amount and just go with it. But there's a lot. I think these things are good. I don't know if I want to do it to my only car. If it was a second car, maybe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I keep thinking as a second car, to be fun, but I don't. I still want to have a 911 that's reasonably OEM. You know what I mean? But I think if you can have two, maybe that's what you do. Where one is a little bit, a bit outlaw. I guess it is an outlaw, really. Project car, outlaw car.
Yeah. You like if you go and pick up your whatever version of GT3 and you hang on to your 997, like eventually, you might kind of go, mess around with it and sort of, customize it if you know that you just want to keep it.
Yeah, and I know you don't like Magnus Walker, but I'll just quote him again. I mean, I remember I was watching something that he was talking about his cars. Like some cars he does, outlaws on them. Some cars he does a lot of changes to it. But other cars he said he just doesn't do anything. Like his 64 911, he hasn't done anything. I think the GT2 he didn't do anything except paint the wheels gold. So it depends on the car. And I think if you have the benefit of having a big collection, you can have that variety. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to destroy something which is, so classic and so valuable. And a guy in the UK, Black Betty, Box and Gas Co, I think it is, at Black Betty, his Instagram handle. I watched a video on him, a live Instagram, and he said the same thing. Some cars he modifies and other cars he doesn't because of the value, because of the pure value and, the classic, the heritage of the car. He doesn't want to sort of mess with it too much.
Like I said before, I'm sure some people probably look at my car and go, what the hell have you done to that? It's a very nice 997.1 GT3 and you've done all that.
Before we get on to the shifter thing again, I just want to go back to the 997 Sport Classic. And I don't know whether you watched the video, but that live Instagram that Magnus Walker did with the head of Porsche Exclusive Manufacturer last week.
I didn't get to watch it. He sent it to me.
It could be still on IGTV. He was talking to the guy, and the guy who's in charge of it, his first project with Porsche Exclusive, before it was called, I think it wasn't even called Porsche Exclusive then, was the Sport Classic, was the 997 Sport Classic. And I don't know whether I talked about this last week, but he was saying, first thing was they made 250 cars, and the heads of Porsche were saying to him, they weren't even confident that he'd be able to sell 250 of them, right? Because Magnus Walker asked the question, how come he didn't make more? And he said, well, we're lucky to get 250 because they didn't think we could sell 250. And he said what his favorite thing about that car is the roof, how difficult the roof was to manufacture on their production line because of that because of the shape, like you said, the shape of the roof.
It's got a double bubble thing.
Double bubble, yeah. And he said the other thing which he's happy about is he says that even though people can make a 997 look like a sport classic, the roof is the bit which they cannot replicate exactly.
Yeah, right.
And I thought that was a good point, right? You have this one thing that is like, it's significant enough that I think he was saying that the production line, I'm testing my memory here, that they actually had to carry it across from one thing to put it on the production line because the Sport Classic was made on the same production line as the 997s. Their special ones are made on the same production line. And it was some kind of really complicated thing with that bubble roof because it wasn't, usual.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
And that's the sort of thing that like true enthusiasts will sort of point out as well, and they'll be able to kind of spot, like real anoraks will kind of realise the difference between all those sorts of features. But
and some people don't even know it exists. The roof is different. People don't even know that's such a key feature. That is the key feature of that classic.
I saw that car when I went to the Porsche Museum.
Oh, did you?
Cool. It's really cool. Yeah. I was
never
looking back at the photos and I found it. It's they're very, very nice. The colour of it's kind of quite interesting too.
Yeah. What is the colour of that Sport Classic? It's a grey, right?
I don't know. It's
one of the greys.
Yeah, it's like one of the battleship grey type things.
Yeah, yeah.
With the really subtle centre stripes.
It's a beautiful car. I mean, you could never get one now. God knows how much. The last one that sold at auction, I think, sold for $700 US that I saw. That was the last one I saw, and I think that was about 18 months ago. So I'd hate to think what they're worth now. What else, Steve? We're nearing the end of the podcast, I think, but we haven't covered. Tell us about the carbone dilemma, the shifter dilemma.
What was I doing?
Well, it's an update to a previous episode. So
yeah. So as you may have seen on Michael's Instagram, I had the wooden shift knob that was sort of inspired by 917 Carrera GT. What I like about it is that the sort of rod matches it, because some of the other ones, we've discussed this in previous podcasts, to my eyes didn't look that great. So this carbone one looked really good. And then I don't know why. Oh, that's right. Because I'd put the Pepito kind of inserts in, I sort of thought that maybe it was all just a bit too kind of sort of hectic, like there's just way too much stuff kind of going on. And it sort of dawned on me that like maybe one of the ways of kind of pulling it back is to swap the actual kind of gear knob from the sort of multi-layered one to just like a darker sort of single kind of timber. What is it? Smoked oak.
Smoked oak. Yeah, the one you have is smoked oak.
Which is just much darker.
The one you have is smoked oak, and it's rings. If people go to Carbone...
Antique oak.
Yeah, antique oak and oak. And it's done... You can buy it at Carbone, but it's actually made by a guy called... I don't know his last name. Joel
Konosenko.
Yeah, he's the actual artisan that gets it made for Carbone. But Steve found out something interesting, actually.
So I was just interested to see if I could just kind of potentially buy the knob and kind of, swap them out because I'm an idiot. But then just in talking to Joel, I discovered that also the rod itself, he actually kind of offers it in a couple of different finishes, including what I actually always originally wanted, but I didn't think was possible, was matte black. So
yeah, the matte black looks good.
That would just kind of take some of the craziness away from the interior of my car.
Well, the matte black with the smoked oak shifter is actually a really nice combination. The solid smoked oak with that black it looks really, really good. I have to say, I think you should get it, mate. I think you should get it. then I'll borrow your one.
I keep saying it because I actually, all the kind of gags aside, I do still actually think it's probably more suited to a silver Carrera than it is to like a white GT3 with a cage and all that sort of stuff in there. But
it's probably worth a try. I mean, the thing is, if people want the black rod, they can't get it from Carbone. They have to go directly to
Well,
it's
Joel, just not listed as an option. And I did sort of ask them at the beginning, but maybe it's a new update that Joel's kind of offering. So
right. Anyway,
tempted, very
I
tempted.
think if you have a Porsche, you should check it out. They're pretty cool. They do look very, very cool. And I guess they're semi-expensive. I think they're sub €400, right? They work out cheaper to be sent to Australia. If you're somewhere that's outside the EU, they take the VAT off, the VAT off. So it actually works out quite cheap. Or cheaper.
Yeah,
cheaper.
look, I'm impressed with the quality of it. I actually think, when you kind of get it in your hands and everything, the craftsmanship of the kind of wood turning, when you're kind of literally driving with it. I went for quite a long drive today.
How come you didn't tell us about that? Huh?
No, because I went to see a mate and he lives out in Dural.
So you went down the gorge at Dural and went down those windy roads?
No. Nothing like that.
Okay.
Just a couple of freeways.
The problem with these shifters is, though, Steve, are you okay changing gears when you can't see the numbers on the top?
No. I'll put it in. I've gone from third to reverse and I have no idea what's going on.
Those of you who know, though, Steve's shifter is so short. Like, I'm not kidding. You look down at that shifter, and I've said this before in that video, I don't know how you know what gear you're in, because I know when I'm in second or when I'm in third, but yours is sort of like always in the same position. It's so short that it's very, very difficult to like. And if you don't have the thing on the top, you're going, where in the hell am I? What gear am I in?
Well, they're all. I mean, it's obviously like it's a standard pattern, so you kind of know where you are. But I reckon I know you're sort of semi-joking, but you get into what was it? S2000. I remember when I jumped into a friend's S2000, that the spacing in that gearbox is so tight that you're also kind of wondering exactly which gear you're in. It's very hard to kind of know if you're in third, first, or fifth.
Right. That was a question I wanted to ask you, actually. Your numeric shifter you have, do you have the numeric cables as well? I can't remember if you did or you didn't.
Yeah, it went the whole hog.
Oh, you do. So you have the cables and the shifter. That's why it's so precise and so mechanical.
I have no experience of just without the kind of cables. I did a lot of reading about it, but
because some people,
it's good.
Some people install it without the cables. They just use the cables, just the numeric shifter and the cables that are already in the 911.
Yeah, because it mirrors you can get like the factory cup car cables, and when you read all the kind of comments, again on Renlist, apparently it introduces quite a bit of noise into your kind of cabin. Right. So there's a lot of rattling and whining, sort of like transmission noise. Sorry,
but the numeric cables have a lot of adjustment, don't they? Is that what it is?
Because I'm non-mechanical, I just got them to fit it and haven't touched it. But
no order amateur here.
No, I'm not going to be sticking a butter knife into anything.
All right.
Maybe my toast.
Okay. I don't think we have time for the other things we're going to chat about today. I think we will make this one not short because we're at an hour almost. But I was going to talk about the steering wheel. Steve is trying to get me to do my wheel still because he hates my triangle wheel with a multifunction.
No, I do not. I just think that you would enjoy. I think you would enjoy the joys of a nicely trimmed sort of steering wheel, because I think it's the interface, and I am pro Alcantara, and I actually think it makes it sort of nicer. Even if you didn't go Alcantara and you want brand new leather, brand new non-shiny leather with a little 12 o'clock marker is quite sweet.
Yeah, and I think you're probably right. And I keep thinking, and I did chat about this with Nick in the Porsche Stories one, because I think he's also thinking about it. But I think maybe the triangle version, to keep the triangle version and to buy the one off eBay, there's one for sale on eBay in Australia for like $300 Australian, like you said, and then sent to the UK is about another $100 Australian. And then if Linas does it, it's 280 odd pounds, probably plus VAT, so probably 350 pounds. To get it done in his, I think he calls them Porsche GT wheels. I saw an image on his Facebook. I have asked him about it, and I asked him what would be the proper cost and everything, but he hasn't responded, so I don't have an answer yet. And then there's Royals wheels in the UK as well, which someone said they've used Royal wheels, and Royals, I think, yeah. And they sent me Royal steering wheels, and they sent me an image of their wheel, which looked pretty good. I think I may have sent it to you, Steve.
I've heard of them before you'd mentioned it. Like, there's a lot of places, because I think in the States there's Dallas custom steering wheels, and there's a guy in Poland, or there's a couple of guys in Poland. It's not the Carbone guys, but I know they do wheels as well. But
There's a
when
guy
you
in
sort of
France
troll
as
the
well.
forums,
There's a guy in
yeah,
France
there's
as
all
well.
these people that kind of specifically kind of do wheels, and I've had a wheel done before badly, and you get really disappointed. But there are people out there that do it obviously really well, and it's just like out of factory, and it's not going to cost you thousands like it would out of the factory, like a factory part.
I guess my dilemma is that as much as it's a lower cost to get the triangle wheel, which is cheap from that wrecker in Australia that came out of that, whatever it came out of, 997 or Boxster or whatever, same wheel, and to get it done here in the UK, it's not going to cost me that much money. You know what I mean? It's it's probably
It's relatively inexpensive, yeah.
It's probably like $1,000 Australian to get it done. But do I spend the extra money and actually get the sports wheel, the round wheel like yours, and get a new airbag, which is going to cost an absolute bomb, and do it properly? And
the conundrum with that one is just the airbag, because you have to buy the airbag in Australia because you can't actually get one shipped, and then that's where all of a sudden you're up for whatever it is. It's probably going to be like $2,000 Australian dollars.
Well, I could buy the factory. I could buy the factory wheel for $1,300 US from the one with marker. Factory wheel for $1,300 US. Alcantara.
But don't you need the airbag?
But then you need to buy the airbag from Australia, which is probably $2,000. So you're probably looking close to 4,500 fitted instead of 1,000 Australian fitted. 1,000 Australian non-fitted, so probably like 1,300 Australian fitted. So it's a big difference in price, It's a huge difference in price.
Massive, huge difference, yeah.
But I think if you're doing the wheel and you're doing it in Alcantara, I think it needs the center marker. I keep seeing ones without the center marker. They're on Royal wheels. They have a few pictures of the 997 wheel. I think they might have a triangle one, actually, without the center marker. Mm-hmm. It looks a bit odd, and the black Alcantara looks way too dark. If anyone's thinking of doing it, make sure you get the right shade of Alcantara. The dark grey, which I think you recommended to me, Steve, it's out of the factory. It's dark grey looks better than the black, because they do black, but the dark grey it's that shade lighter makes a big difference. The black looks too strong to me. It looks way too strong.
If you want to go halfway house on the center thing, the center stripe, the marker, I think it's the current GT4 or whatever. It's stitched, so there might not physically be like a coloured, piece in there, but there's sort of like a bit of stitching to kind of show that,
right.
Which is quite a classy kind of way of doing it if you're not kind of going full sort of motorsport looking.
What's that in the new GT4?
GT4 and Spider, I think.
Okay, I'll have a look at that. Because
both
my reference,
in leather and an Alcantara.
Right, my reference was the 918 Spider, because they have the black leather wheel. It either comes with the silver marking or the lime green marking, and they also have it in Alcantara with the silver marking or the lime green marking. So I just did a search for that because I read somewhere on a forum that they had the silver marking. So that's the one I've seen like that. I don't know what other Porsches have the silver marking.
Is that what you were thinking about? Like,
I was thinking of silver marking,
like silver marker.
But it looks like plastic vinyl, the silver marker. It looks a bit, and with the Alcantara, it looks a bit odd. Like it seems like it's Alcantara, but the silver marker is like a vinyl material. I don't know. What's yours? Isn't yours a painted marker?
I can't tell. So mine's a factory one, and you'd like.
Yeah, but it looks better.
Well, it's funny that you say that because, like, I think that was sort of probably. Was that maybe the first generation? Oh, they had a center stripe in the 996 GT3 RS, I think. It almost looks so dodgy that it's painted.
But I kind of like that. I kind of like it. It looks better, I think.
Yeah. I don't think it is painted because I'm sure it would kind of wear and everything, but it has that sort of basic look to it, so...
Right.
Yeah,
all right.
Anyway.
The only other thing we're going to talk about was the fire extinguisher. Did you want to touch on that? I had with Nick's one, he actually explained his fire extinguisher so other people could know how to do the Renline one. So that's coming up on Tuesday in the Porsche stories, Porsche owner stories. But you had that update about the fire extinguisher that you were talking about last week.
It's just we were talking about fire extinguishers, and I mumbled my way through it because I'd sort of mentioned that I'd read some stuff on Renlist. And then it popped up on Pelican Parts. They had a sort of special for American Labor Day, So the brand in the States is Element fire extinguisher. You can't get it in Australia, so the equivalent here, I'd sort of just to kind of clarify it, is called Fire Striker, which is actually made in Italy. And like I sort of said in previous podcast, it looks more like a flare, like, you know, when you get stranded on your desert island. It's an aluminium kind of tube, and you pull one end of it off, which ignites it, and then it's a potassium aerosol, and basically it just sort of says that it'll last like 100 seconds. So what's that, like a minute and a half?
Yeah.
More than a minute and a half, which I think when I was reading up on that Renlist thing was saying that that's actually quite a bit longer than, say, like a 1 kilo extinguisher.
Oh, really? They only last that long, a 1 kilo extinguisher?
Yeah, they don't last very long.
Is that enough
so
to put
like,
a car fire out, an engine fire?
And that's exactly what some of the kind of commentary was. So when I looked this up, if you're in Australia and you're kind of curious, then you can go and get it from ARB four-wheel drive centres, because they stock them. And then
you should just buy one to have in your car.
Well, the last bit was that you're talking about the cool Ren line-ish bracket. I don't know what Nick kind of had.
Yeah, the aluminium one is very nice detailed.
You can, if you look up, there's a dude worldwide called the Bracketeer.
Right.
He makes brackets, and I think you could use one of his things with either the Element or the Fire Striker thing, and it's the same concept. It will attach to the seat rails under the passenger or driver seat and all that sort of thing.
Okay, I guess.
So if you're going to, if you're going to go down the path of this sort of slightly more new age type fire extinguisher, it certainly doesn't look as kind of cool as like a sort of motorsporty type thing, but sounded like the effectiveness might be possibly better. I don't know. I'm no expert.
It takes a lot of research, doesn't it, really? But if anyone wants to know about the fire extinguisher that Steve's got or what he's talking about, just send me a DM and I can send more information if Steve has it. Because I know some people. I'll send the links. I'll send the links.
Just to clarify, I don't have it. I was just reading about it, and I just sort of knew that I'd kind of fumbled my way through it when I sort of spoke about it, so I'd clarify it.
With regards to the Renline bracket, the Renline bracket is very nice. Nick will explain it in the podcast coming up on Tuesday, and it's quite difficult to find the right fire extinguisher for it. Here is a limited selection, and because, as we know, you can't post fire extinguishers, so you can't buy one from the US or you can't send it from the UK to Australia. It's not possible. But I think the cost of the Renline one, when I was doing putting all the prices together of the plastic factory 997 fire extinguisher mount and holder, I think it was almost close to £400 from Design 911 when all the parts are put together, because the guy I told you, the Carrera White, gave me the details. I think Nick said that's about what he paid for his, maybe a bit more. So, for the quality of materials and the look of it, I mean, obviously the Renline one looks really cool because it's got the circles and it's aluminium and it's, machined very beautifully. It's and apparently it's very easy to install under your seat. You know what I mean? His mechanic did it, so it's quite easy to install. But anyway, that's fire extinguishers. Huh?
Are you tempted?
I don't know. I'm tempted for a lot of things. I got to have priority. All I want to do is get back to my car. The Australian government is just locking Australian citizens out. And I tell you, I should make this podcast political and talk about that, but I won't.
It's getting a lot of news coverage.
What?
It's getting a lot of news coverage. They're talking about sending military planes. Like the opposition is sort of suggesting that they send RAF planes to kind of bring Australians home.
I have mentioned, I did mention it, but the Australian government, apparently someone needed help overseas because they were stranded, and they said you should go to a homeless shelter. Yeah,
I read that.
Did you read that? That is just absolutely terrible. Yeah. What has happened? You got to look after your people in these times, and it's just like people are just being left stranded. Anyway, that's another story. I think that's it for today, Steve. Have you got anything else you want to talk about? Nope. I think we got through most.
In the podcast.
I'm talking over you. Sorry.
It's all right.
We have a couple of other things we want to talk about, but we're going to leave that to another episode. Thanks for listening. This is a PorscheCooled Podcast. As you know, I'm Michael Barth. That was Steve, GT Steve on Instagram, right, Steve?
If I must, yeah. Nothing to see here.
All right, so you're listening to this episode. Don't forget to take a listen of the Next episode, which is on Tuesday, which is the Porsche, like I said, the Porsche owner stories with Nick. That's the first one, number one. So that will be up on Tuesday on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, everywhere else. Thanks, Steve.
Cool, man. I'll speak to you soon. Have a good week.
Yep, you too. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.